I see. Children are also here.
Hare Krishna going on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining with us.
Oh, I'm more than happy. Thank you.
Hope everything is going fine in Vrindavan also.
Well, our temple is sealed. It's been sealed since the end of April.
Oh,
And fortunately, I'm sealed in. So, of course, it's blissful in the temple, but there's a lot of suffering going on all around.
all around is not the thing. Correct.
Probably
We
read that.
We will
at
all
least
pray
one-
for.
Excuse me?
We will all pray for everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. India is in a very difficult situation right now regarding
Yes,
the
Mataji,
COVID.
correct.
And how's everything in Kanaya?
Everything going fine up to now.
Okay, that's nice. You're not under any lockdown or anything like that?
Lockdown is there only in the nights.
At night, you have curfew. I see.
Curfew is there. Morning, everybody is going for work.
Oh, I see. That's good. So you had a very nice kirtan already. Would someone like to read the verse?
One more minute, we'll introduce.
Okay.
Then we'll proceed the proceedings. 2 minutes, Mataji.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Pranams. We are very fortunate to have this today. We are very eager to hear from you. Mataji, I will introduce with your kind permission to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis about your profile. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, welcome all the devotees to our today's SATSANG program. So, we will just quickly introduce Mataji. Her Grace Devi Shakti Mataji is a disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Those who have visited ISKCON Vrindavan definitely know Mataji. Mataji is very doing active service, like book distribution all the time, garland seva, and so many things. She has been sincerely serving the mission of Srila Prabhupada for around more than 50 years. So we are really fortunate. I will just quickly read her profile, so it will definitely inspire us. So many of us know Mataji from earlier class also, but still for new devotees, I will quickly read. Mataji from childhood, she wanted to understand the teachings of God. So then she had led her right place to back to Godhead. So Mataji was basically from the immigrant servants who went and settled in America. So there Mataji got very much interest into the spirituality, and she at the age of 5 decided to enter the Hebrew school and completed a religious education up to the age of 15. And Mataji's goal was to study the Torah in Hebrew to understand God teachings. At an early age, Mataji realized that it was the sweetest and most beautiful moments in life where when the children gathered around at the school and sang ancient songs in loving praise of God in Hebrew language. I felt Mataji is explaining here in one of the Backward magazine. I'm just reading from that. I felt no joy greater than this, so it propelled me on my studies and my hopes and understand the scriptures one day. That hope was somewhat frustrated as graduation or confirmation drew near. I had hardly learned any Hebrew, and we had rarely had classes on the holy books. I asked my most respected teacher when we would learn these things, and he soberly replied that I would have gone to Hebrew college for studies. Though disappointed at the time of graduation, I still gratefully received the gift of an English translation of Torah and began to read it carefully. It was full of ethical and moral quotes for humanity, and I was inspired to incorporate them into my teenage life. This alienated me a bit from my friends and classmates who had little bit interest in morality and religion. By following the rules of cleanliness and diet, I gradually felt a change in my life. I became steadfast and determined to maintain these rules even if people around me didn't follow them. Following the rules seemed worthwhile because I felt peaceful and safe as if I were protected by God when I followed his instructions. It also helped me to develop an inner personal closeness to God. College of Monastery, by the age of 16, it was time to choose where to go to college. I decided to seek the most ancient scriptures known to the mankind and study those books in their original language. It seemed that Oriental culture was more ancient than Judaism, so I looked for the best Oriental philosophy colleges in America. I also considered monastic life, so I wrote to the professors for advice on whether to enter monastery or a college. One professor from Japan sent a handwritten reply by saying I should complete college before entering the monastery. On this advice, I chose what seemed to be the finest university for Oriental studies, the University of Chicago, and was accepted as a student there. I arrived at the university a week before classes started. I decided to look at an interesting book in the massive bookstore and used that week to read it. After hours of searching, Mataji finally found the most amazing book called Bhagavad Gita. It intrigued me. The translation of its title proclaimed that it is to be very song of God. I read it and reread it and realized that this was the knowledge that I have been seeking. It had the answers to my questions about life plus answers to the question I never knew to ask. It taught me how to see God everywhere and in everything. I was delighted. I realized I had found what I was looking for the university. I had found Bhagavad Gita, God's original instructions to mankind. Rather than waste another 4 years of my life on academics, I decided to find people living in the principles of Bhagavad Gita and learn more from them. It was at the 1960s, and there was a lot of searching going on in America. The epic center of the counterculture was in California, and I lived in Pennsylvania and didn't see much happening in that part of the country. So I decided to go to California, hoping to find people practicing Bhagavad Gita. Krishna guided me, and there are on the corner of Haight and Ashbury streets, devotees were chanting Hare Krishna. When I saw them, I was struck with wonder. These people must know something I don't know, I thought, because they are doing something I would love to do. I was spellbound by the singing and dancing, but when they came around the conch shell for collecting donation, I didn't have a single penny to give them. So they passed by me, so I was too shy to speak with the young man in the robes, and there weren't any young women with them. I returned to my home in Pennsylvania with my Bhagavad Gita. Sweet sound in the street. By this time, I was carefully following the instructions of yoga as described in Bhagavad Gita and living a simple, pure way of life. One beautiful day, while sitting in the meditation on Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, I heard the sweet sound of singing the handwritten symbols. I followed the sound and saw the devotees again. One of them handed me a card imprinted with the Maha Mantra. I stayed to watch them dancing on the street corner. That evening, I visited the temple for the Bhagavad Gita class. I attended the next Sunday feast and moved into the temple 2 days later. There were only 3 devotees living in the temple and they needed a lot of help. In those days, we had to learn everything quickly and then become teachers ourselves. We were all just fledgling devotees from diverse backgrounds, but somehow Krishna had brought us together in his service. Prabhupada, our eternal spiritual master and guide, presented the teachings of Bhagavad Gita so perfectly that anyone from any background can become Krishna's devotee. Thus, my quest beginning from the age 5 to understand God's teachings was ultimately successful. I found the most ancient scriptures and I study them now in original language, Sanskrit. My deepest joy still remains in Sankirtana, the congregational chanting of God's holy names and glories. I also now understand from practical experience how Krishna leads us to him through the variegated religions of the world. By sincerely abiding by the Supreme Lord's instruction, anyone can attain the perfection of life of love of God. So we are very, very, really fortunate,
That was the whole
Mataji, to
article.
again have your now, but it is really inspiring.
Jai
Mataji.
Ho.
So
Yes.
we thought by reading it again, there are devotees who will get inspired. So really, we are very happy, Mataji. So over to you. Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Praji, we will welcome Mataji by chanting 3 times Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Yes.
All together, we will welcome Mataji. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
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 Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Rama
Rama,
Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama, Rama
Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama,
Hare,
Rama
Hare
Rama,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama, Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, we are unable to offer any garland from here, so that's why we are
Doesn't
welcoming by
matter.
chanting. Hare
I would
Krishna.
like to offer you a garland. Here we have a lot of flowers this season. So shall we begin? Chapter
Yes,
2,
Mataji.
verse 16. Would you like me to read the verse?
Yes, Mataji.
And then you'll chant responsively?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay.
Only
Now,
one will respond.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Om
Bhagavate
Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 16. The chapter is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Nasato vidyate bhavo,
Nasato vidyate bhavo.
na bhavo vidyate sataha,
Na bhavo vidyate sataha.
ubayor api drishtontas,
Ubayorapi drishtontas.
tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi.
To ananyos tattvadarshibhihi.
Would anyone like to repeat the sloka?
नाशतो विद्यते भावो
Nasato vidyate bhavo,
न भावो विद्यते सतः
na bhavo vidyate sataha,
उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तस्
ubayor api drishtontas,
अनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः
tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Anyone else? We'll read the word for word translations. Na, never,
Na
never. Asataha,
Asataha.
tataha.
of the non-existent.
Of the non-existent.
Vidyate,
विद्यते
Vidyate.
there is.
there
There
is
is.
Bhavaha,
भावः
Bhavaha.
endurance.
endurance
Endurance.
Na,
न
Na.
never.
never
Never.
Abhavaha,
अभावः
Abhavaha.
changing quality.
changing
Changing
quality
quality.
Vidyate,
Vidyate.
there is.
there
There
is
is.
Sataha,
सतः
Sataha.
of the eternal.
of the
Of the
eternal
eternal.
Ubayo,
Ubayo.
of the two.
of the
Of
two
the two.
Api,
api
Api.
verily.
verily
Very.
Drishtaha,
दृष्टः
Drishta.
observed.
observed
Observed.
Antaha,
Anta.
conclusion.
conclusion
Conclusion.
To,
to
To.
indeed.
Indeed.
Anayo,
anayo
Anayo.
of them.
Of
of them
them.
Tattva,
Tattva.
tattva
of the truth.
Of the
of
truth.
the truth
Darshibhihi,
darshibhi
Darshibhi.
by the seers.
by the
By the
seers.
seer.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Purport. There is no endurance of the changing body. that the body is changing every moment by the actions and reactions of the different cells is admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever-changing, and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalist and personalist. In the Vishnu Purana 2.12.38, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotimsi Vishnur Bhuvanani Vishnu. The words existent and non-existent refer only to spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the reestablishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme Being, understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature, as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance. And to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. Om Agyana Timrandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutle Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvisesha Sunyavari Paschatya Desha Tarine. So when we're reading the Bhagavad Gita, we always have to remember the circumstances in which Arjuna and Krishna are speaking. They're in the midst of two powerful armies, one of the Pandavas, the other of the Kauravas. Arjuna has asked Krishna to bring his chariot in between the two armies just before the battle begins. So there's not much time. Everyone is arrayed on the battlefield to begin this fight. Now this fight is the desire of the Lord, of Sri Krishna, because he wants to establish Yudhisthira as the Dharmaraj, as the religious king of the whole earthly planet. So on the other side, you have persons who are supporting and the usurper of the kingdom, and that's Duryodhana. And it so happens that some of those persons are the guru of Arjuna, the grandfather of Arjuna, the brothers, the nephews, the fathers-in-law. Many intimate associates of Arjuna are facing him, prepared to kill him. So Arjuna, being very soft-natured, a devotee is compassionate by nature, Karunika, when he sees who is arrayed there on the other side of the battlefield, ready to attack his side, which is his brothers, and it's a much smaller army, he becomes overcome with lamentation. And he begins speaking to his dearmost friend, Sri Krishna, expressing that he's unable to engage in warfare. Although he's a Kshatriya, he knows what his duty is. Krishna's standing there right next to him. He's put his Gandiva bow down. And as of the 7th verse of this chapter, he surrenders to Krishna. No longer does he see Krishna as his friend. He now is asking Krishna to tell him what he should do, because he is not willing to fight in this dharmic battle. So Krishna, the first question Krishna may ask is that we're friends. How can I give you advice? We're on the same level. But no, Arjuna at this point, he understands that only Krishna can tell him what the right thing is to do. Because as a particular type of a friend, he's aware, although he and Krishna were very close as friends, he's also aware that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So now he surrendered to Krishna, and beginning with the 13th text, which is just a few texts earlier, Krishna begins his description of the difference between the body and the soul, or Sat and Asat. So in order for us to understand Sat and Asat, Prabhupada gives an example. Although it's a material example, it will help us to understand a little better what is Sat and what is Asat. Now, we have the sky. The sky is present all over the planet. Everyone sees the sky. It's all pervasive. And sometimes within the sky, there's a temporary cloud that appears. And from this cloud, rain is generated. And from the rain, when it falls on the earth, the seeds which are lying dormant, they then come to life, and there's a lot of greenery, a lot of growth. And then when the rain no longer is flowing and the water dries up, then all of this vegetation that was so abundant during the rainy season, it also dries up and disappears. So we know also that this material sky is temporary, but we can understand at least temporarily that the sky is all pervading, the sky is ever existent, and the cloud, it appears and it disappears. So Prabhupada, he makes mention of the 7th chapter here. There's a particular verse in the 7th chapter, and that is text number 5, where Krishna says, besides these, O mighty armed Arjun, what he's speaking about of these is the material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Then in verse 5, he says, besides these material energies, O mighty armed Arjun, there is another superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So here he defines the living entities as para. They are superior energy above the 8 separated material energies that comprise this material world. So this is a division between Sat and Asat. Asat that's the dull material energies that appear and disappear. That is what our material body is composed of. We're presently encaged within a material body by the grace of the Lord, because we have desires separate from the desire of the Lord. And we are Sat. Sat means eternal. And we have, just as the Supreme Lord has, we have a Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. That means we do have an eternal body that presently is covered by our gross and subtle bodies. That spiritual body, that Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, is described in the Shastras to be 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair, beyond material comprehension. There's no microscope that is able to visualize 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. Now, we get this information from the Vedas, and as what's being described here, remember, this is the Supreme Lord speaking, but he is referring to the Tattvadarshis, those who have seen the truth. Now, the truth means the Supreme Lord, and understanding between Sat and Asat. This word Tattva comes many places in the Bhagavad Gita. One very famous verse is Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Veti Tattvataha. That means that one who understands the birth and the activities of the Supreme Lord in truth, Krishna says that he never has to come back to this material world again. So this truth means understanding that Sat, the eternal existence of the Lord. And in order to understand the eternal existence of the Lord, we can also see the qualities within ourselves. Prabhupada gives the example of the ocean and a drop of water from the ocean. So the drop of water has the same qualities as the massive expanse of ocean, but in small quantity. So we also have the same qualities, and these qualities are described by Rupa Goswami in the Nectar Devotion, the 64 qualities of the Supreme Lord, and the living entity, they can possess a particular percentage of those qualities. And by understanding those qualities, we can understand gradually the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this Sat and Asat, because we are eternally Tatastha Shakti, Tat. Tat in Sanskrit means the shore, in between the water and the land. So we, Tatastha, we're situated in that in-between area. And sometimes we're overcome by ignorance, and sometimes we come to the platform of knowledge. So this platform of knowledge, Krishna will later explain that by jnana and vairagya, we can attain liberation. And what is liberation? Liberation means finally realizing that we are not this material body. At the present stage, we might be considered to be nitya baddha. Nitya baddha means eternally bound, thinking that we're this body and this country in which we are born, this belongs to us, this home, this family, everything connected to the body is ours. Aham mameti. I and everything connected to this body, that is my identity. So that is previous to liberation. Now, the 5 activities of elevation in the human form of life begin with Dharma. Now here, in this Bhagavad Gita, the purpose of Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna is to convince him that he must follow his Dharma. His Dharma, at this point, is according to the body in which he has been born. Again and again in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna refers to the dynasty in which Arjuna was born. this Bharatvarsh, the Kaurava dynasty, Pandava dynasty. These are all great Kshatriyas. And their dharma, which Krishna explains later in the 18th chapter, the dharma of the Kshatriya is to protect religious principles. That means sometimes violence has to be committed against the adharmic persons. So Arjun, his whole life, he was trained to be an ideal Kshatriya. He went to the Gurukula at Gurugram, where Duryodhana lives. And Duryodhana, although he was a Brahmin, he was expert in teaching the Dhanurved and the different sections of the Vedas that would train the Kshatriya princes. So all of the Kauravas and Pandavas were trained under Dronacharya. And now his guru is standing in front of him. Arjuna, being on the side of Dharma, when he sees that part of his Dharma is going to be that he's going to have to kill his own guru, he goes into total lamentation. How can I kill my own guru who taught me everything that I know? So Krishna is, through these slokas, he's trying to convince Arjun that this is my desire. Above the Dharma, according to the body of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, even above your Kshatriya Dharma, in which you're compelled to fight, even if you say you're not going to fight, you're still going to have to fight. Otherwise, you'll incur infamy. Above that is Sanatan Dharma. And Sanatan Dharma deals with this Sat. Sanatan Dharma means our relationship with the Supreme Lord. Now, here's the Lord speaking directly to Krishna, telling Arjuna what he wants him to do. So, as a Kshatriya, his dharma is to fight, and according to his Sanatan Dharma, that is to please the Supreme Lord. So there is no way that Arjuna can refuse to fight in this battle. This lamentation, the first thing that Krishna explains to Arjuna is that never was there a time when I did not exist. He makes three distinctions. Never was there a time when I did not exist. Never was there a time when you did not exist. And never will there be a time when any of these kings have not existed. So the three distinctions means all of us are eternal. But in this present body, the body can never endure. And that is the asat portion. So the body must die at some point or another. If someone immediately comes to us and tries to kill us, we will naturally, by intuition, we will try to protect ourselves. That's because by nature, we don't die. The soul never dies. But we know, ultimately, in due course of time, this body must die. Now, we can acquire knowledge by three different processes. Pratyaksh means we see, let's say during this time of pandemic, especially here in India right now, so many people are dying. Actually, everyone is going to have to die sooner or later. So we can try to find one person that perhaps hasn't died, but that would be very difficult for us to find a person who never died, because how can we go through over 4 billion people to see whether everyone is dying or will die or has died? Practically by pratyaksh, by direct perception, we cannot conclude whether man is mortal or immortal. By anuman, we can make a hypothesis that we have seen that anyone who is born eventually dies. So that can be a hypothesis, but again, we would have to experiment to prove that hypothesis. Or, as Krishna is saying here, we can go by Shrotaya. That means, according to the Shrutis, we can accept the fact that the Supreme Lord and the Vedas proclaim that of the asat, there is no endurance. So here, this is what Krishna is describing to Arjuna. According to the Shrutis, and according to those who know the truth, the Tattvadarshis, they have concluded that of the Sat, or of the eternal, that means of the soul living within the body, there is no death. But of the Asat, or the external body, there is no endurance. That means the body must die. And therefore, when you come to this conclusion, there is no reason to lament, because Bhishma, Drona, and all of the Sajjana, all of the family members who are on the other side of the battle, they're going to die anyway. And as a Kshatriya, any Kshatriya who has the opportunity to die in a religious battle, either they die and they go to the heavenly planets and enjoy, or they're victorious and they enjoy the kingdom on this planet. So for Kshatriyas, fighting is a type of a sport. Just like when you play in sports, there's always two sides, and you see who the winner's going to be. So here, all the Kshatriyas from all over the world have gathered together for this battle. And they're all eager to take part in it, because they know whether they win or whether they lose, they're the winners. Because either they go to the heavenly planets or they attain the kingdom on this earthly planet. The special benefit that's going to happen at this particular battle is, because Sri Krishna is personally present in front of both sides of the armies, each warrior who dies, which is practically every single warrior except for the Pandavas, they, because they had darshan of the Lord at the time of their death, they will attain liberation and go back to the spiritual planets. Now, this was the arrangement of the Lord, because he was winding up his pastimes. He had already killed all the demons that were present. He wanted to send his family members, the Yadavas, back to either the spiritual world or to the heavenly planets. He was preparing to leave also, because the denizens of the Vaikuntha planets, they were calling him back again. So he wanted to do everything wholesale. So he brought all of the participants in his Leela to one place. And he killed them all at one time, and he gave them all liberation. And he then reestablished the principles of Dharma by making Yudhisthira Maharaj the king, because the adharmic usurper, Duryodhana, who tried in so many crooked ways, they tried to murder the Pandavas, they tricked them out of their kingdom, they insulted their wife terribly. These people were completely adharmic. And those who, due to financial obligation or due to other types of reasons why they were on the side of Duryodhana, because they chose the wrong side of the battle, they were also fit to be killed. Even Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev was being financially supported by Duryodhana and his family, because when Duryodhana took over as king, Bhishma Dev remained. So Bhishma Dev was also obligated to fight on the side of Duryodhana. And therefore, Krishna wanted him to be killed. And he made special arrangement that Bhishma, although he could choose the time of his death, he was standing just before Bhishma, so Bhishma could have that final darshan of Krishna. and remember him in his particular rasa, and then return back to the Vaikuntha planets where Parthasarathi is worshipped. So each one of these warriors, actually they're attaining the greatest benediction. And this is what Arjuna will finally realize at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Even then, Arjuna gives him a choice. He says, now I've explained all of this knowledge to you. You decide, what are you going to do? And at that time, Krishna, he says, no, I'm going to fight, just as you have asked me to do. And then he takes up his Gandiva bow, and Sanjaya, although throughout the Bhagavad Gita, he was hinting to Dhritarashtra that there is no way the Kauravas can win this battle, because Krishna and Arjuna are on the other side. And wherever Krishna is, there's always victory. So therefore, this battle, this conversation, which it's estimated it only took about a half an hour for Arjuna and Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita together, full of questions and answers. But by the end of the Bhagavad Gita, if we study very carefully, we then can be convinced also to perform our duties, both types of duties. One is according to the body in which we've received, and the other is our Sanatan Dharma, and that is in relationship, our eternal relationship with Krishna. There's the devotee, there's Krishna, and there's the sambandh, there's the relationship between Krishna and the devotee. And that the Guru is required to teach us how we engage in our eternal service with the Supreme Lord. So from Dharma, we engage in Dharma in order to get artha. That means some benefit in this world. And then from artha, we get kama. Kama means enjoyment. And then when we've enjoyed as much as we possibly can in this material body, and the material body being non-endurable, we realize sometimes in our old age, if we're fortunate before that, that trying to enjoy with this material body is simply a frustration. We can't enjoy in this material body. We're not meant to enjoy. So then we seek liberation. And again, liberation means when we understand that we're not this material body, that we are Sat, we're eternal Atma, eternal parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Now, Krishna explains this very beautifully in one of the most important verses of Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. So when we understand that we are part of this Brahman, or the eternal nature of the Lord, then we become Prasanatma. As a spirit soul, we then become satisfied, because we understand that we are eternal. And though the body will die, we will not die. Then na sochati na kanksati. Neither do we hanker for anything anymore, nor do we lament. So now Arjuna is lamenting because he's afraid he's going to have to kill his family members, his gurus, his teachers. This lamentation will be removed by Krishna when he understands that this is the desire of the Lord. Na sochati na kanksati, sama sarveshu bhuteshu. Then we start to see all living entities equally. Now, what is that equal vision? Sama sarveshu bhuteshu. We see that all living entities that are born within this material world, within their heart, there's the Atma and the Paramatma. And according to their previous activities, they've attained one of the 8,400,000 species of life. Therefore, we know that all the Atmas within the different types of bodies are equal. Whether it's a mosquito, whether it's Lord Brahma, whether it's a family member, whoever it is, whether it's an animal or a tree, we're all equal. And then the last Samasarveshu Bhuteshu, I can't remember the last sloka with the last line, which is the most important.
Bhakti lavate para.
Yes. It's number 54. Yes. Mad bhaktim labate param. Then we attain, yes, in that state he attains pure devotional service unto me. So this is the goal of life, this pure devotional service, which is transcendental, param. And when we see the eternal nature, the sat of every living entity, and we see that their material body is asat, it must be destroyed. And we understand that the Supreme Lord of all these anshas, Ma Mai Vangsha, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, of all these separated living entities, Krishna is the Angshi. They all emanate from him. And therefore, we choose to render devotional service to Krishna. And at that time, then we come to the most important sloka of the Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna repeats twice. He explains to Arjuna how to perform devotional service in just two little lines. Manmana bhava mad bhakti mad yaji mam namaskaru. Manmana, very simple. This is what Lord Chaitanya has taught us to do, to always think of Krishna. So because the mind, especially in Kali Yuga, is very disturbed, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is the great chant of deliverance so that the mind becomes free from the disillusionment that we are this body. So Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakti. Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto. Become my devotee. And that means learn the process of devotional service. So Lord Chaitanya, through his disciples, particularly Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, he instructed them in devotional service, and he told them to write books describing this process of devotional service. So therefore, one of the first books that Srila Prabhupada translated was the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu.
Wow, nice birthday gift. Nice birthday gift.
Mataji. Mataji, can you unmute yourself? Actually, I muted everyone because there was some disturbance. Thank you, Mataji.
Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto, think of me, become my devotee. Madhyaji, worship me. So this process of worship, this is what Prabhupada has established in our temples. And then, Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru, offer your homage unto me, offer your obeisances unto me. So these things are very simple to execute. This is the simple process of Bhakti Yoga, by which we attain the fifth, the Param Purush Artha, and that is Prem, Krishna Prem. So from Dharma, we get Artha. From Artha, we get Kama. From Kama, then we aspire for liberation. And then after liberation, when we learn this process of bhakti, when we can see all living entities equally, we become free from lamentation and hankering. Then we can attain that supreme perfection of life, of human life, and that is Krishna Prem. So this ultimately is the reason why we study Bhagavad Gita every day, because Krishna is teaching us. We can see ourselves, Arjuna is so elevated. He's an eternal associate with Krishna, who goes everywhere with the Supreme Lord, from universe to universe, traveling with him. Although he's an eternal associate, he doesn't go back to Godhead. He stays with Krishna as Krishna goes from universe to universe. And this Bhagavad Gita is spoken in every universe at different intervals. This Bhagavad Gita, particular one, was spoken 5,000 years ago. Krishna was blessed by his guru, Sandipani Muni, that whatever he said would remain eternally fresh and have the highest transcendental knowledge. So therefore, this Bhagavad Gita is still studied every day by those who are intelligent, by those who are seeking the perfection of human life. Human life is so rare. Out of 8,400,000 species of life, there are only 400,000 human forms, and not all of those are civilized. So only amongst the civilized human beings do they get this opportunity to inquire about what is Sat and what is Asat. So we are in such a we have such a great opportunity in this lifetime. We shouldn't waste it on the same activities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, that the animals are engaged in. We should aspire to redevelop, reconnect ourselves with the Supreme Lord through the process of bhakti yoga, and by reading the Bhagavad Gita spoken by the Lord, then we can progress on to Srimad Bhagavatam. And that Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 slokas, Bhagavad Gita is only 700 slokas. Within these 18,000 slokas, we learn about the Supreme Lord. We learn how to serve him. We learn all of the pitfalls, how one is able to attain success, how many of the great devotees who even have aspired for success did not always attain it in one lifetime. So all of the problems that we also experience on our path back to Godhead are further described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then after Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate is the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, where we learn directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself the qualities of a pure devotee and the manifestation of pure love of Godhead, even in this lifetime. So we have a lifetime of studying to do. We should never forget the basics. Every day we should study Bhagavad Gita, at least one sloka. Every day we should study Srimad Bhagavatam. This is why Prabhupada established the morning and evening programs. He called it the sandwich. And he wrote very strong letters. He said, I am attending the morning and evening program, Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning, Bhagavad Gita in the afternoon, and during the daytime, engaged in service, in the evening, daytime engaged in service. I am sitting and hearing the classes. Either Prabhupada was giving classes or hearing the classes. So all of you should not be a bigger Paramahamsa than your Guru Maharaj. So therefore, we should study these books very carefully. And as a special treat, Prabhupada, he translated Chaitanya Charitamrita for us. We should study it. We should learn how Lord Chaitanya, he manifested all of the symptoms of ecstasy and how this love of God is brought to perfection by the worship of the Supreme Lord. So we have a glorious life in front of us. It doesn't matter what type of body we're in. It doesn't matter where we live. It doesn't matter what, according to our body, our particular Deha Dharma might be. There's so many different Kula Dharma, Deha Dharma, all the society Dharma. All of those things become secondary to our Sanatan Dharma, which is trying to redevelop and come back to our original Satchit Ananda Vigraha, which is our real form in serving the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. So we have 5 minutes if anyone has any questions.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Mataji. It was very, very instructive lessons you have given us, and especially the more important stressed on reading Srila Prabhupada books. I think that's a very, very important instruction for every one of us to help us in progress in Krishna consciousness. So we'd like to request devotees, like anybody has any questions, Mataji is available. You can unmute yourselves and ask any doubts or questions you have. Hare Krishna.
Vishwakalyan Prabhu and Manoharni Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Yes.
No, I think there is a question, hand raised by Vishwa Kalyan Prabhu. Prabhu, can you? Yeah, you are able to unmute, right? Prabhu, you can ask.
Yes, Prabhu. Prabhu will give turn to Mataji first.
Yes. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Manorini Mataji, please go ahead.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Mataji, Dandut Pranams to you. Thank you so much for the class. Mataji, my question is that I was under the impression that only the Yadus had come under the order of Krishna to help him in his pastimes. So even the army of Kurukshetra, they were also brought exclusively for assisting Krishna in this pastime.
Excuse me? I couldn't understand the question.
Yes, Mataji. Mataji, all this while I was under the impression that only the Yadus had descended to help Krishna in his Leela in this material world. So
In his
in this
Leela.
class, but in today's class, I understand that even the army of Kurukshetra also came to assist Krishna. Is it the right understanding that I'm having?
Yes, well, the point is, no, there even, for instance, Jai and Vijay were present in the form of Shishupal and Dantavakra. There were many, many different types of living entities. That many demigods came to take part in these pastimes. The living entities that were present, Bhima himself, he was cursed to take birth. And although his brothers all were able to be liberated by Ganga Devi, he had to stay. So many, many living entities, Krishna had them all gathered together because he wanted to liberate them all. It's not that the Yadus were specifically ordered by the Supreme Lord to, yes, come to the earthly planet, take birth in the Yadu dynasty to assist him in these pastimes. But there were many, many other demigods who wanted to see the pastimes of the Lord, and they also took birth in different families. So anyone who was there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna arranged that they'd be there so that they could attain liberation. I don't know the details of every single person. For instance, Karna, he has a pastime of being, in his past life, he was a big demon. That's why, you can go into all these different personalities. It takes a lot of studying, a lot of reading of the different Puranas and Mahabharata, things like that. But nobody was there accidentally. Everyone was a part of Krishna's pastimes, although there were millions and millions of warriors there. And all of them were fit for liberation. That's why Krishna brought them all there at the same time. Okay?
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Dandut Pranams. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandut Pranam.
Hare
And
Krishna.
pranam to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, Mataji. With your permission, I just wanted to summarize today's class and ask a question as well. So, Mataji, you very nicely explained today that why Bhagavad Gita needs to be studied and why Bhagavad Gita and what circumstance Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and how only Krishna was the right person to help Arjuna. Krishna was the only person to help Arjuna. And then you spoke about Sat and Asat, and how you spoke about Tattva and how Tattvadarshis explained Sat and Asat. And you also mentioned about Sanatana Dharma and explained about Pratyaksha, Anumana, and by Shruti we can understand Sat and Asat. And you explained that you explained about Sanatana Dharma as well, that our original constitutional position is to serve Lord Krishna. And very nicely you explained that because it was the desire of Lord Sri Krishna to fight, therefore Arjuna could not deny that, because as a living entity, as a soul, it was his constitutional position to fulfill Lord's desire. And then you also explained the duties as explained in Bhagavad Gita, that there is the four Purusharthas and then the fifth Parama Purushartha of Krishna Prem. And then you also finally concluded beautifully by explaining the importance of reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Srila Prabhupada books. So thank you so much for that glorious class, Mataji. My question is somewhat related to what Manoharani Mataji asked prior. So Mataji, you mentioned that the Kshatriyas, if they are victorious in battle, then they enjoy the basically they enjoy the victory later on. And if
Yes.
they are not victorious and they lose their life in the battle, then they get liberation.
No, they go to the heavenly planets and enjoy.
Oh, okay, heavenly planets.
Yes.
Okay, Mataji, that answers my question, because I was under the impression that they get liberation. So my question was, if Kshatriyas are on the fighting on the side of adharma, how did they be eligible to go to heavenly planets or liberation or such exalted benedictions that are meant only for pious personalities?
Well, this is an exceptional battle because, as I explained in the class, Krishna arranged that everyone got liberated. That's explained in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Everyone, because they were seeing Krishna at the time of death, they all got liberation and went back to the spiritual abode. So they got better than heavenly planets. And that's many of them were coming from the heavenly planets. They might have returned to their original position. The others attained in Vaikuntha a position because they remembered Krishna at the moment of death. So whichever side of the war they were on, they all got liberation. So this is, I can't talk about other wars, but so far as this war is concerned, regardless of which side they were on, they all got liberated because that was the desire of the Lord. So this is a very special battle. It's not your ordinary battle. All right?
Yes, Mataji, like you rightly mentioned, it's a dharma yuddha. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Mataji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, then we'll close
Yes.
now.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mataji, for giving your valuable time to us and inspiring us in Krishna consciousness. So, on behalf of Kanyadesh Yatra devotees, we would like to express our sincerest gratitude to you by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Ram
Hare.
Ram, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much.
I'm
Thank you
very
very much,
honored.
Mataji. We wish to
Thank you so
hear
much.
from you more and more, especially when you are free. Please give us your wonderful class on Bhagavatam also. We will be very eager to listen from you. We will inform you and we will invite you. Please consider our invitation in future also.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored. Okay, Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. Jai.
We will do Vaishnava Pranam, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Sevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Ananta Kodi Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai.
Jai.
Her Grace Divya Shakti Mata ji ki
Devi Shakti
Jai.
Mataji ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
All assembled devotees ki Jai. Hare
Jai.
Krishna. There is a small some announcements, especially on this special COVID situation. We are approaching the Akshaya Tritiya, and we have a request from Mayapur community. There is a hospital called Mayapur Community Hospital. So in this special pandemic, lot of devotees are struggling to survive for oxygen and bed capacity, etc. and etc. So there is a call from Middle East devotees. We will be, they are requested to do some seva to this hospital to donate oxygen concentrators and oxygen plant and piping, bed for COVID facility and COVID medicines and COVID testing investigation, nutritious meals for the patients, like that. Lot of options are there, and already some of the Middle East yatras offered their contributions, like Damodar Desh and Krishna Kada Desh, Balram Desh, Shama Desh, etc. And they are requested Kanya Desh also. So we are planning to do a small donation on this. Is around 5,000 KD, $5,000. It's around 1,500 KD will come. So those who are interested to help in this regard, please come forward. We'll be providing the details by today or tomorrow in the groups. You can all do your offerings. So because one or another, today or another day, we all of our devotees may be going and settling somewhere in Mayapur or nearby places. So it will be useful for all of us, especially in this particular situation. It is very essential for those who are staying in Mayapur. So please come forward in this humble regard. Hare Krishna. And today's very auspicious day also, Ekadashi day. So you can all of you can offer the donations today itself. Hare Krishna. And tomorrow's breaking time, Rajini, anybody have any idea? I didn't check actually.
Yes,
So tomorrow
I
time morning, actually it is breaking time from
5 to 9.
5
to 9:30. 5 to 9:30.
5 to 9:30, please, you can all do your fast breaking that time. And we will be continuing our morning program. We will be doing this Guru Arati now.
Yes, Prabhuji, one devotee named Rutika has raised hand. Is it?
Yeah, anything?
Is you want to ask something, or it is by mistake, unknowingly?
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Util.
Prabhu, is there one more class at 11:45?
No,
Yes,
we have children's class will be at 12 o'clock.
Yeah. She's
Okay,
asking
Prabhu.
for children class.
Yeah, children's class will be there at 12 o'clock. You can log in at 11:45.
Okay, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, you want to display that brochure here or no need?
Brochure actually it is belongs to Damodar
Damodar
Desh.
Desh.
We are doing the editing and we will announce it by today, Bhaji.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Okay, Hare Krishna.
YouTube you can disconnect, Prabhu.
Okay. And
Hare
we will
Krishna.